Welcome back to Lurking Together. In this episode, we're going to take a look at stories of revenge against terrible neighbors. I was inspired by a recent post to tell my own bad neighbor story. I can't think of a better place to post it. Flashback to 2014 or so. I moved out on my own in 2013 and moved into an old house that was converted into a 2-floor apartment, directly across from my future in-laws. The downstairs neighbors were loud. Blaring music at all hours. Yes, all of the hours. They wouldn't cut the grass or take out the trash on our shared schedule. They were crappy neighbors, but never bothered me directly. The guy was pretty chill when sober and would turn the music down a little when I texted him. He was okay until his girlfriend moved in. Now add shouting matches to the mix, and all of a sudden my request to turn down the music makes him turn it up. I can barely walk on my super thin floor without her banging on the ceiling with a broom. I was okay since I am a heavy sleeper and could sleep through anything. My wife moved in, and I quickly found out that she is quite the opposite. She needed the fan turned on at a certain angle in the doorway of the bathroom, the door closed halfway, blackout curtains taped to the wall so zero light comes through, zero sounds other than the fan, you get the idea. I told her that we can't expect the neighbors to remain silent when she's ready for bed, and that we need to be reasonable. But the wall rattling music needs to stop during the night. She hated it during the day, but I told her there's nothing we can do then. So she would go to her parents' house a lot during the day. I talked to the neighbor guy and he said, yeah man, that's cool. But it turns out the girlfriend wasn't having it, and his attitude then changed to, yeah well it's our house so you can go F yourself if you think you can tell us what to do. And you can move out if you don't like it. Something definitely had to change once my wife was pregnant, and then the baby came. So I did the only thing I could do. I fought fire with fire, and maliciously complied with the law to a T. I could only report them for noise after 11 o'clock p.m. I forget the morning hour when the noise could start, but I believe it was 9 a.m. My dad has these huge old concert speakers in his garage. Professional grade, black leather bound, 5 feet tall by 3 feet wide, and a pretty nice vintage stereo amp. He has 2 of these speakers, but my apartment was so small I sadly only had room for one. We replaced our coffee table with this thing, and laid it face down onto our thin office carpet. Tired of his crap tunes, I tested this Geneva Convention breaking device when they weren't home. Holy cow. I had to take everything down from the tables, counters, and shelves because they would shake off. I prepared audio files to feed the stereo. I was giddy like a kid with a new Christmas toy. I turned it on when I left for work and got my wife up to send her to her parents. I came home from work and hung out at her parents until it was close to bedtime. They resisted for 3 days. On day 2, I found a pile of manure on my doorstep, but it didn't faze me. I cycled between sine, saw, and square waves in clashing chords, marching music, Washington Post march on loop, preaching clips. They weren't just atheist, but outspoken anti-Christian, so it was a must, the most stupid songs you could think of. Captain Planet theme song, chicken dance, etc. This poor old house rattled in ways I didn't think possible. The vibrations from the sine wave would make your vision blur. I eventually got a text from him that read, sorry man, you can stop now. I did not. He needed a few more days to let it sink in. Plus I had so much fun putting it together. They complained to the police and the landlord. There was nothing they could do since I wasn't doing anything wrong. I didn't even hear music during the time of peace to follow. It was so quiet. They would build up their courage and try again every few weeks when I wasn't home, but my wife was. I then showed her how to tame the beast so she could let it loose while I was away. I had to give them a spanking every now and then, but they learned. They were so happy when we moved out. What did this guy expect to happen? He thought he could just torture his neighbor with loud noise all the time with no response. Some people really can't predict the consequences of their actions. For our next story, more crappy neighbors fail to predict the consequences of their actions.
Friday night here in the country can get a little crazy sometimes, so I don't mind when my neighbors cause a ruckus or loud party as long as it's not too crazy. Tonight I'm on call for Virginia State Police towing rotation, which means I've got 25 minutes to get to wherever the wreck, DUI, or impound is. As luck would have it, my neighbors are having a party, and guess what's blocking my driveway? That's right, about 25 to 30 cars. I lived on a dirt road at the end of a cul-de-sac, and it's pretty narrow. One in, one out type of deal. And with this rain we've been having, parking in the grass/clay/mud is really not the best idea. Even with a 4x4 it can still get tricky. I noticed a few cars coming in early this evening and walked over to my neighbors. I made it pretty clear I was on call, and as long as they didn't block the road or my driveway it would all be good. No problems here. Well, I get a call from my boss asking if I can go warm up the rotator and the light-duty flatbed tow trucks. It's about 12:30 a.m., so I get my boots on and other gear because if I'm up I might as well stay at the shop and clean a few things to stay busy and make the night move along. I get in my car and as I'm backing out of the driveway I notice I'm blocked in. I don't mean by one truck, but by nearly 15 different vehicles. I calmly walk over to my neighbor's house about an eighth of a mile hike away, and as I'm looking for them through the crowd of drunk teenagers, some idiot wants to know why I'm on his property. He's not the property owner. I've never seen this classy gentleman. Finally, I find my neighbor and ask her if she can move the cars and tell her I've got to go to work. She says in a normal tone into the house, doesn't yell over the music, "Whoever's blocking the driveway next door, move your trucks." Then she slams the door in my face. I knock again and she answers with a drunken "Oh God, this be word again?" Internally I'm thinking alright then, I do my best to explain I'm on call and need to get out of my driveway to go to work. She comes back sloshing a beer exclaiming it's a party, relax. She shuts the door in my face and yells freak that D-word expletive. I smile and as I'm walking away a macho man throws a beer at me and cackles, "Yeah, you best leave, go on, kid." I get on the phone with dispatch and call for as many trucks as we have available tonight, about 10, and tell them to come on over. Mama's got some PPIs, private property impounds. I call police dispatch and ask if they'd send out an officer in case things get out of hand, and as soon as he gets to my place my rigs start rolling up and hooking vehicles up and taking them to the impound yard. We get down to the last 3 vehicles. A yellow Civic, gold Silverado and an old F-150. The Civic owner bolts to his car and takes off. The Silverado girl, pretty wasted, gets stuck and starts tearing up my property. The officer walks over and she throws a fit. Long story short, she gets arrested for underage drinking and DUI. The Ford owner doesn't show up. I get to work after all the impounds and I brought coffee and snacks for my drivers. Tomorrow's not a business day, which means if these tools want their cars back, it's going to be the regular $289.50 plus 2 days of storage at $55 a day and a $100 gate fee. I make a note in every single storage sheet, papers that the vehicle owners get, to thank the girl who had the party for getting towed. Several of the kids' parents called wanting to know where their cars or trucks were. I gave them the yard address and told them they can come anytime. As soon as they started shouting about illegal tows and threatened me with lawyers, I showed them pictures of their cars with no parking signs. I explained that I tried to reason with the owner of the property, who was myself, but she was tired of being blocked in by drunken teenagers. There are signs on my road saying no parking, and not to block the driveway. Don't tick off a tow truck driver or she'll legally take your vehicles. Edit: the gate fee is only for after hours. It covers expenses of overtime for the office staff who have to get out of bed and come to work in the middle of the night. Also, how do I sleep at night? With a glass of chocolate milk while reading r/Ask Reddit.
In our next Reddit story, the neighbor from hell gets introduced to a little something called tree law. Around 8 years ago, my parents and sister moved out to the log cabin that we built as a family for 6+ years. They live on a secluded lake and bought 10 acres for themselves, and to the north, another couple bought the 5-acre plot right next to us. We were the only 2 neighbors next to each other for 1.8 miles. At first the couple was friendly and we had no problems at all. After around 6 months of them living there and building their new home, my parents bought 144 acres to the north of them. This means that his property is sandwiched between our 2 properties. And since the only way we could get to our land is to cross a strip of his land due to easement laws. He had no problem at first, but one day the trail we used to get to our land to the north was covered with large logs, branches, yellow tape, and a no trespassing sign. My dad went to go ask what was going on. The neighbor, we'll call him John, came up to my dad and I and demanded that we give him a 20-yard wide and 400-yard long piece of our property to the north of him. He said he wanted to cut down some of the trees to the north of him to make sure none of them fell on his house. This is a thickly wooded area. So of course my dad said no, and that he wouldn't even sell this small portion of land that he requested to be given to him for free. We will find out at the end of the story as to why he wanted this small strip of land so badly. This is where a 5-year crap storm started. Before I mention all the bat crap crazy things he had done to us over the years, I want to point out that he is a born fraud and took a settlement from the railroad company he worked for due to a back injury that would leave him disabled for life. Not true at all. We found out that he sues everyone that gets in his way, because his oldest daughter is a lawyer and works the system. Here is a small list of the crap he has pulled, mainly towards my parents, along with others. He had gotten away with everything for 5 years, because his daughter tells him how to stay in the clear. Also, he was on his 5th marriage, so he was not the most likable guy. He slashed the tires of our 2 four-wheelers on 2 occasions, so we couldn't drive them to our land to the north. He shot out and or slashed the tires of our vehicles when we were gone or in the middle of the night. We put up some cameras, but they were not clear enough to prove it was him. Don't freaking threaten my dog's life. My golden retriever, Bailey, is outside most of the day, and John's dog is also named Bailey. The 2 dogs love to play together, but John did not like that. He said he would shoot my dog in the stomach if he ever went on his property again. After that, weeks later he would start to yell out Bailey to lure our dog onto his property. He grabbed my dog by the collar and put a pistol to his head and said he'd kill my dog if he ever came on his property again or played with his dog. We put up an underground electric fence so she wouldn't go over there anymore, even though John would always try to lure her into his yard. On several occasions he would hit golf balls into our windows and blame it on me, since I was a golfer. Once again, everything he did, we could not prove in court. When his house was being built, he went through 3 different contractors, because John was threatening to sue every contractor for every little thing and all 3 contractors left him. When he was getting his driveway poured, he offered to help the contractor, and once again he was pulling another scam. Where I live, if someone starts helping a contractor with work, there is a weird law that states that a contractor would need to pay John for the work he helped with. This went to court and he got his $10,000 driveway for free, plus took him for another $15,000 for some other bullcrap. We too were in the process of finishing up my parents' house and he stole very specific wood from our place to use in his house: juniper, diamond willow, and thick pine for window bucks. A couple $1,000s worth of wood. Once again we did not have enough evidence for a search warrant. During Thanksgiving dinner several years ago, our house caught on fire due to the stonemason cutting corners and using cheap and wrong parts for our fireplace. Firefighters from 5 cities were dispatched, because we live in the country. Due to the amount of fire trucks that were coming and going, John took his truck and parked it sideways on a strip of road that was narrow so that the firefighters coming and going could not get through. He stated that we were ruining their Thanksgiving due to the commotion of our house burning down and fire truck sirens. The next fire truck that showed up used the force within their rights to plow his truck off the road. John tried to sue us and the fire department for the damage to his truck, but it never even made it to court because the fire department had the rights to do so. What I listed above only scratched the surface. There is so much more crap he did to my family that my mom and sister wanted to move. They were afraid of what he might do next. This is where all of the pieces started to fall in place to take him down. The spring after our house burnt down, there was a storm and 2 trees from our property fell onto John's lawn and he called demanding that we remove the trees. We had no equipment at this time and told him we couldn't get to that immediately. So what John did was cut down a 20 by 40 yard area of trees to drag the first 2 trees to our property to the north. Later he set the pile of wood on fire and burnt down 20 plus more trees and 20 acres of prairie grass. One of the trees that burnt down to the north was inhabited by a bald eagle. We could confirm the cutting down of 24 trees to drag the fallen trees that were in his yard, but couldn't prove the fire that was started to burn those sawed-up trees. When I saw that he had cut down a number of our trees on our property to the north of him, I took detailed photos of all the cut down trees and marked the type of tree and how thick the trunks were. It turns out that in my state there is a monetary value to those trees and he was screwed. However, when I was marking the trees he cut down, I realized I didn't know where the true property line was. A few weeks later I found the prints to show where the property line was and he built his house, 5,000 square feet garage, and underground propane tank a few feet onto our property. So now we found out why he wanted that land so badly. During this time, John had put his house up for sale and put a $120,000 markup on what the actual market price was. We found out why he was doing this, because he and a friend had gambled a lot of their savings on buying the property around a lake, and they were selling no lots. He was bleeding money. We were finally able to put a lien on his house and that was his only lifeline to get cash to make their land payments. To make the rest of this story go by faster, I'll skip to the part where we ended up buying his house. We told him to put the price back down to market value. And then my father said that we could settle the price of the trees he cut down out of court, and he agreed to subtract that from the price of the house. My dad also identified the stolen wood and we could trace it back to the same unique wood in our house. We said we would sue him for that too or he could drop the price even more for stealing our materials. Lastly, because John was such a jerk, my dad used the leverage of the lien we had on his house to drop the value even more. John was bleeding money and was desperate for anything. So in the end my parents bought his house for 28% of its market value. John's 4th wife would end up leaving him a year later. He filed for bankruptcy, lost his land since he was upside down on the payments, and now lives in a cheap studio apartment alone. TLDR, never put a gun to my golden retriever's head. My parents feared for their safety, but could never find a legal way to prove what he did to my family. I was patient for years trying to find a legal way to make a jerk like John lose almost everything in his life. Update: forgot the obligatory pic of my doggo. Thank you all who gave security advice or insights into other things. Also, the buying of the house took place 2.5 years ago. So a lot of this happened a long time ago. The reason there were no lawsuits towards the end is because the amount of money he lost on his house was way more money than if we were to file a lawsuit against him for the very few things we could prove. Update 2, I really should have mentioned this in my post. It seems a few are asking why it took so long to know about the true property line. There was an old barbed wire fence that was near the property line and both parties assumed the fence was the property line. When I found the old survey of the land, there were notes made regarding how many feet south of each post was the true property line. So the true property line was around 20 feet south from what we had thought. Also, to all the jerks in this thread, I was far away at university for the first 4 years of that crap. So stop saying I sat back and watched my family suffer. Get screwed, you bunch of jerks. Well, that's it for this episode. Please like the video, subscribe to this channel, and leave a comment letting us know what kind of stories you want to hear.